Hello, everybody. This is Nanette Kennedy with Evo Revo and Humanities Team. And this is our weekly book discussion group of Neale Donald Walsch's books. Today we are reading the closing pages of book 2, and we will begin book 3. And if you have questions or comments while Linda's reading and you want to have her stop reading for a minute because you want to interject something, just butt in and say, can I ask a question or make a comment?
Yep.
Okay. And did I forget to mention anything else I'm supposed to mention? All right. Well, let's begin.
All right. In closing, thank you for joining me on this journey. I know that for some of you, it may not have been easy. Many of the ideas presented here challenge much of what we have believed and some of the ways in which we have behaved before coming to this book. We're invited by this material to create new beliefs, to exhibit new behaviors, to embrace new ideas about how things could be. We are called dramatically and urgently to move to a new thought about our lives and the way we're living them. This is the, quote, new thought movement, close quote, about which we have heard. It's not an organization or an element of society so much as it is a process by which all of society shifts from one way of being to another. It is the 100th monkey theory in action. It's about critical mass. I've presented this material here exactly as it was given to me in order to assist facilitating that movement, to help in achieving critical mass and producing that shift. And produce it we must, for we cannot keep going the way we have been. The ideas and constructions by which we have guided ourselves as a human race have not served us. They have, in fact, nearly destroyed us. We have to change. We must change if we are to have any kind of world at all to hand over to our children or to theirs. Having said that, I want you to know that I hold enormous hope for us. I believe that as a human race, we face right now an unparalleled opportunity to remove those blocks which have so long held us back from the realization of our grandest possibilities. And I see everywhere a growth in not only individual, but also at last in collective consciousness. I know that it is this collective consciousness which forms the mass and becomes the energy fueling the engine of our experience on this planet. And so it is the level of our collective consciousness which is critical. The divine purpose of Conversations with God, I now see, is to raise that collective consciousness. The words in these books were never intended to be given only to me, but were aimed through me at the entire world, just as they are being aimed at the same target through you. Will you allow the words in these books to stop where they are now, to end their journey in your mind? Or will you join me in being a messenger, carrying them to a larger audience? What's interesting about the present condition of the human race as I see it, it just scrolled away on me. What is interesting about the present condition of the human race as I see it is that most of us agree things aren't going well. Yet if most of us individually agree, why can't all of us collectively do something meaningful about it? That is the question which plagues humankind. How can we turn individual awareness into collective action? I believe we can do so not only by living and spreading the message of Conversations with God, but also by making a conscious effort to join others who have already come together in groups and organizations seeking similar changes and solutions, working toward the same ends, sharing the same goals. I would like to suggest 3 groups here. I know, of course, there are many others. If you agree with some of what you've read here, I encourage you to get in touch with and support the Institute of Ecolonomics, created by my friend Dennis Weaver. That institute holds its guiding principle, the notion that ecology and economics are not enemies, and that building the blending of those two into one unified approach to improving life on this planet is the only way such improvements are going to be possible. An extraordinary amount of time and energy is being devoted right now by Dennis and the Institute to exploring new avenues of cooperation and communication between the business sector in our worldwide society and the individuals and organizations devoting themselves to watchdogging and improving our worldwide ecology. Dennis believes that the ecological movement and economic movement need not be at odds, nor are they at cross purposes. What is needed is the development of ecological and economical soundness in a way that we do business, in the products we create, in the services we offer. To capture this idea and to empower it, Dennis has coined the word ecolonomics. It's a 5-syllable statement of his belief that economic benefit is not inherently and need not be externally juxtaposed with ecological sensitivity. What is good for one is not automatically a disaster for another. If you'd like to empower this idea as well, please write to the Institute of Ecolonomics, P.O. Box 257, Ridgeway, Colorado, 81432. They'll send you information about letting you know how you can become involved. Another organization which has captured my attention and my admiration is the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning, created by Michael Lerner. Michael and I have talked about many of the issues raised in Conversations with God, Book 2, and he told me he created the foundation as a vehicle to build a movement to change the bottom line in American society, to shift the paradigm from selfishness and cynicism to caring and solidarity. What Michael seeks is to alter our society's very definitions so that the productivity or efficiency of corporations, legislation, or social practices are no longer measured solely by the degree to which they maximize wealth and power, but rather also by the degree to which they tend to maximize our capacities to sustain loving and caring relationships and to be ethnically, spiritually, and ecologically sensitive. His foundation has built local chapters around the country, and some of those chapters are now exploring initiatives to require state and local governments to consider a corporation's history of social responsibility before awarding government contracts, or even requiring corporations to reapply for their charters every 20 years, at which point their social responsibility records would be a factor for reincorporation. The foundation focuses on both economic needs and individual rights, and opposes corporate or governmental forces which would deny either. Michael is the author of The Politics of Meaning. I earnestly recommend it. As Cornel West says on the back jacket, have the courage to read it. You may also want to read further about these issues in Tikkanen magazine, published regularly by the foundation. Somebody want to interrupt?
They were reading. I was listening to the reading. So,
to subscribe to this wonderfully stimulating publication and to learn more about Michael's work, contact the Foundation for Ethics and Meaning, 26 Fell Street, San Francisco, California, 94103. Telephone 415-575-1200. A third resource of which I have become aware is the Center for Visionary Leadership, founded by Corinne McLaughlin and Gordon Davidson. Corinne and Gordon are co-authors of 2 more books high on my list of important reading: Spiritual Politics, Changing the World from the Inside Out, and Builders of the Dawn. Their educational center seeks to provide spiritual insights in innovative whole system solutions to social problems. The center offers public programs, consulting, and values-based leadership training for individuals and organizations. One of their ideas which excites me the most is a program of citizen dialogues to help heal the issues which divide us on the planet. You may become a part of this work by contacting the Center for Visionary Leadership, 3408 Wisconsin Avenue Northwest, Suite 200, Washington, D.C., 20016, telephone 202-237-2800, or online via email at cvldc@netrail.net. Some of you may choose to support all three of these efforts, as I do. Whatever you decide, what I hope you will see here is that it is not true that an individual cannot make a very real and lasting impact on large issues, challenges, and problems which confront us. The plaintive cry, "But what can I do?" is answered here. There is plenty you can do, and there are plenty of places you can do it. So this is a call to action. This is a request for reinforcements at the front line. This is your invitation to join with me in forming an army of spiritual workers, united in a common desire to bring love and healing and to return celebration to the world. Having read these words which were given to me in the Conversation with God books, I can never be the same. Neither can you. We are now, you and I, drawn to the precipice, pulled into a confrontation with all our prior beliefs and ways of doing things. Most people are bound to be uncomfortable with some of what is written here. We humans have, after all, declared ourselves to be a magnificent race, a superior species, an enlightened people. The Conversation with God's books look at where we claim we are and say, sorry, not quite. They look at where we declare we want to go and say, not the way you're headed. Nope, I don't think so. And so the books, especially perhaps this book too, may create some discomfort. Yet discomfort always signals growth. Life begins at the end of our comfort zone. Of course, in our process of growth, we are not going to accept all the new ideas placed before us, and certainly it's not suggested that the ideas presented in the Conversation with God's trilogies should be accepted as gospel. Indeed, that's the last thing God would choose for us, for as God says, the treasure is in the question, not in the answer. This book invites us not to adopt its answers, but to continually and unceasingly ask its questions. The questions Conversation with God places before us will lead us right to the edge. Not only the edge of our comfort zone, but also the edge of our understanding, of our beliefs, of our experience. They challenge us to a new experience. If you'd like to join the process of co-creating that experience, if you see yourself as proactive rather than reactive in this process, if you know yourself to be one of the messengers, one of the senders, as well as the receivers, then join our new army. Become a bringer of the light. Support the efforts and organizations mentioned here, or any other worthy cause or group of which you are aware. There's one more group I wish to tell you about. It's the group Nancy and I have founded called Recreation. Its purpose is to give people back to themselves and so to change the world. Our work started with a monthly newsletter sent to all those who requested a subscription. Thousands around the globe have done so since the publication of Book 1. It has continued with a program of first-person involvement in bringing the message of Conversations with God to communities across the country and around the world. And as we see the work culminating in this invitation to you to become a very real agent of change in the world you touch, even as you recreate yourself anew. All of life is a process of recreation, and the process begins in your own soul. Your soul knows now whether this is the time for you to engage life's most dynamic process, change and creation, at the next level. I know it's the time for me. This is why I've publicly announced that a goal of our foundation is to sponsor and produce the first international symposium on the integration of spirituality and governance. I have this idea that if people of this planet ever decided to govern themselves from the place of their highest spiritual understandings, rather than their lowest thoughts and their deepest fears, the world could change overnight. We plan to host such a symposium in 1999, and we intend that the papers and presentations and dialogues which arise from it become a major catalyst in enhancing, enlarging, and expediting a process which we already see underway, the process of people of goodwill and highest intention coming together and sitting down to work out the issues which separate us, to celebrate the differences between us, and enrich our experience of all that unites us as grand and glorious beings inhabiting an extraordinary place in the universe. Our foundation also produces workshops, seminars, retreats, lectures, and programs of a wide variety all over the world. We keep the fees for all foundation-sponsored programs very low and set aside at least 20% of the spaces at these events for full or partial scholarships in order to render them accessible to the largest number of people, regardless of their financial abilities. This is how we, Nancy and I, and a few of our friends, have decided to work to shift the paradigm. In this closing commentary, I have hoped to offer you some ways in which you can become involved in paradigm shifting as well. Book 3 in the Conversations with God trilogy goes even further than books 1 or 2, describing in detail the evolutionary process of sentient beings everywhere and the workings and constructions of the highly evolved civilizations of the universe. In short, an extraordinary model for those of us to choose to move through life in a new way. Our newsletter contains suggestions and observations on how to do that, and thus become a shifter of paradigms and creator of new realities, both for yourself and others. This information is presented in the form of answers to the questions from readers all over the world on the material in this Conversations with God books. It also contains news of our foundation's activities and on how you can become a partner with us should you choose to do so in any of this. The letter is just a good way to stay connected with the energy of Conversations with God. To receive it, please write to Recreation, the Foundation for Personal Growth and Spiritual Understanding, Postal Drawer 3475, Central Point, Oregon, 97502. Telephone 541-734-7222, and online at recreating@lol.com. The website is conversationswithgod.org. The cost is $25 a year, which covers our expense in getting this publication out to you and supports the larger work I have described here. If you'd like to stay connected but are unable to contribute to the foundation at this time, we'll be happy to send you a scholarship subscription. Simply request it in your letter. I want to end here on a personal note. Following publication of Book 1, many of you wrote me letters filled with understanding, compassion, and love after reading my commentary on my own life. I will never be able to tell you how much that meant to me. Often I was asked in those letters how my life changed since receiving these books. That answer would be far too long to put into these pages in any detail, but I can tell you that the changes have been profound. I feel like a new person, inside and out. I have moved to reestablish a loving relationship with my children. I have met and married the most extraordinary woman I have ever known, and been blessed by the grace of her instruction, which is her life lived and her love. I have forgiven myself for my past, in which, as I told you, I did over and over again what many would call the unforgivable. I have reckoned myself not only with who I was, but also with who I am, and with who I now choose to be. I know at last that I am not my yesterdays, and that I create my most wonderful tomorrows when I live in my grandest vision now. As you joined me and even assisted me with your hundreds of letters in that healing and that growth, and as you have joined me now in walking through this second book, I hope you will hold hands with me again in creating the grandest vision for humankind. Then it becomes our vision, and then we can truly change the world. This may require much of us, yet those of whom much has been given, much is asked. And while we may be pushed to the edge of our comfort zones, even as this book may have pushed some there, we must all remember that the edge is where the adventure is. The edge is where new opportunity lies. And the edge is where true creation begins. And that is where we must meet, you and I, if we are, in the inspiring words of Robert Kennedy, to seek a newer world. The French poet philosopher Guillaume Apollinaire wrote, "Come to the edge." We can't, we're afraid. Come to the edge. We can't, we'll fall. Come to the edge. And they came, and he pushed them, and they flew. Come, let us fly together. Neale Donald Walsch.
Wow. Thank
Is
you for
Nancy M.
What?
Nancy, that's his wife?
that's his previous wife. M is his present wife.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but I wondered if she changed her name or something.
No, they've
Oh my God, thank you for asking that, because I always wanted to know, and I was like, I don't want to ask that because it seems too personal. Thank you, Christine. I was always wondering.
Yep. And as Sarah says in the chat window, thank you, Linda. This is so incredibly relevant to the events of the last 24 hours. It gives me the chills. It's like up and down my spine. And the other interesting thing is, my book is such a new edition that it didn't have any of that in it in the closing. Not a word. It was updated and
So your closing is totally different?
correct. And
Wow.
it says in my closing, just the last paragraph, because I'm not going to read the whole thing. It says, Neale says, shall we close with a gentle thought? Dear God, we know that you are always with us. We understand that we are not just connected with you, but one with you. We are aware that there is no separation between us. Help us now to bring that experience into our lives and into our world. Let each day and each moment be a living demonstration of this truth. Bring us and all those whose lives we touch the fullness and the richness, the wonder and the wisdom, the peace and the perfection of our true identity, that our lives and our world may be healed. Amen and amen. And frankly, except for the dated stuff that you were reading, I think I like the other what you read better than what was in my book, but I was like trying to find it, and I was like, "What is going on here?" So I hopped online to find the online version, and I could follow along with you. But it is so timely, and I mean, I think it was, well, I don't have it up anymore, but in the first couple paragraphs, you read something about, collectively people will come together, and then you think about yesterday, and I said right before the call there was going to be watchdogs, and he said something about watchdogs. So again, I think that the book's been very, very timely. And anyway, does anybody else want to add anything? I'm going to take Anne off mute because I had to mute her. Unmute. Anne, are you there?
Yes.
I didn't know if you wanted to add some thoughts to this.
No, I'm just taking it in.
Okay.
Okay, but I'm here today.
Okay. Well, we're glad to have you here. Does anybody else want to add anything?
The only thing that strikes me is he's talking about 1999, and he's talking about, he mentions politics. And I think that, everything's perfect. So where we are is exactly where we're meant to be. But I can see that one of the things that's really calling out, I think, to be addressed now is that we need to move from these circles and organizations into the political arena. Like, I'm really personally grappling with the idea of running for some kind of office. Like, I don't know. It's not clear to me, and I'm still dealing with it. But somehow, if we're going to wake our government up, we're going to wake it up by being our government. He's talking about self-governance, and I think that that's what this new era that we've moved into is all about. Is breaking up this kind of government that we have and something really new. And it's a lot of people resist that because it's like they just want it to go back to the way it was. People are really, many people still just want, everybody just be quiet. We got a new president, just, and everybody, the tendency and the cellular memory that we have is to go back to sleep. We come out every 4 years, we pay attention for a little while, we cast a vote, and then for the most part, we go back to sleep as citizens. And I think that that's part of, and it's interesting that he talks about it right in here, it's more of a blend. It's like trying to blend the ecology with the economics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they're on the right track, but actually there's something even bigger. We're creative beings. So this economic structure that we have, that we've kind of evolved into, you grow up, you go to college, you get some kind of training, you get a job, you save for retirement, you retire, and your happy days and your free time are when you're old and worn out. It's like, that isn't how it's supposed to be working. And we've gotten so embroiled in that mindset that it is going to take a lot of shaking up to break that. And it's take a lot of internal work for people to realize that they're creative beings, and that whole business of that law of attraction. It's not just that. There's a lot of those laws that apply. But when you come into that place of your internal power and you're connected to source, then things just show up, you know? I mean, so money becomes not something that we actually have to have. And that to think about, okay, how do we get this country from where we are right now to where we're all being creative beings and we've changed our economic base, you know, let's come to the edge.
Yeah.
Coming to the edge.
Well, I think this is,
Go ahead, Nanette.
I was just going to say, I think that's not just in our backyard either. I think that's around the globe.
Global. Absolutely.
And I can't remember where I was reading this recently, but, or maybe it was on NPR. I listen to a lot of National Public Radio. They're just saying that if everybody, instead of having a nice lawn in their backyard, if you have a backyard, plant a garden and feed yourself. You know, there's things you can do that might not be in the forefront of your brain of like, what can I do? Well, but anyway, Christine, I think. Oh, Angela, sure, go ahead.
I totally agree with what you say, Linda, about we just go back to sleep. And I think with Trump now being in power, that's exactly what's happening. Everybody's waking up. If Hillary got in, it would have happened again. Everybody would have just gone back to the old way. And absolutely, it's good. Everybody's waking up now. And Linda, I'm so excited about what you said about running for office. You'd be brilliant. Go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I think that, you know, I like what Marianne Williamson says, that, you know, we really have to look at how we're educating our children, because we're still lining them up in rows and teaching them to conform, these beautiful, magical beings, right? And their innocence believes all of that crap. And we're doing it, like you say, Nanette, all over the globe. So we're still educating our children the way we did before we had cars or trains or planes, right? And so that's what needs to happen. And I know that our country coordinator in Belgium is now involved in some kind of infant care program where children are going to be taught that they're these magical beings and to dream big, dream really, really big.
I think what you just said about dreaming is really important, because as my mother was one of my dearest, if not my dearest friend on the planet. And I can remember one day, and I don't even know what we were talking about, but I was probably in my mid to late 20s. And my mom said, "My God, Nana, you're such a dreamer." And I was like, well, that didn't feel real good. Because it was meant as a pejorative. But interestingly, I didn't know that my father was standing nearby. And later that day, he pulled me aside and he said, "Don't you ever let anybody tell you that there's anything wrong with being a dreamer." And I've never forgotten it. And I never forget will forget how good it made me feel that he stepped in and said, dreamers are what it's about, you know. So
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you, Nanette's dad, because make your dreams big and build your castles high with love and with clarity.
yep. And you know, something else I noticed with all these marches yesterday, and these were, again, all from all over the world, there was a lot of and there was something I was grappling with, which was people saying, "Oh, you guys lost, shut up, go away, you know, your guy won last time, blah, blah," just all that rhetoric. And I saw a poster that somebody was carrying, and it really nailed it on the head for me. And it said, I do not have to, oh God, now I've lost it. But it's something about, something about respecting the office, but they cannot respect the man. And I won't shut up or be afraid to speak about somebody who's a misogynist, somebody who's got no filter, etc. Over.
I think the most important lesson that we can learn from all of this is how to hold the energy that we're all one, even while challenged by these people who don't appear to be even the slightest bit awake. And I think one of the things we really, if we want to accomplish this shift the most peaceful way we can, I think we have to learn how to look at this person without labels. You know, it's like they teach you in psychology, you're not what you do. You know, who you are is not what you do. People make mistakes. People do stupid things. But that doesn't make them fundamentally bad people. Because fundamentally, we're all one. So if they're bad people, then we're bad people. There's no separation between them, between us. So somehow we have to find tools that we can use to process the events that occur on a daily basis without falling into the trap of name calling and labeling. And I spent all day yesterday because we were snowed in, so I couldn't get out of the house to go join the march that was happening here. So instead I marched on my own, and I marched around in Facebook, and I went to different posts, and on almost every march post, there was at least one troll saying something about, you know, suck it up, buttercup, or, you know, whatever. And I engaged in thoughtful, heart-based conversations with them. Just sharing. And I just think sticking to the numbers is a safe place to go. You can't really dispute numbers, you know, so how many people rode on the metro? How many people rode on the metro by 11 o'clock on Friday versus how many rode on the metro by 11 o'clock on Saturday? If you want to, you know, if you're going to argue about numbers, okay, well, there are the numbers. There they are. Look at them. You know, you can look at how many people rode on the metro for Obama first time, second time. You could look at who rode for Bush, and you can see that when you look at all those numbers, Trump had the fewest riders. So, you know, let's just stick to the facts. And in every conversation at some point, I would say, I invite you to open up your heart and feel what's happening around you. Allow yourself to feel the pain that people are feeling. And so anyway, that's just my commentary, that I really think that we're being called to think in new ways, speak in new ways, be new ways. And part of that has to do with our language. And I don't think, I mean, so I just refer to it as the administration now. It's the administration. It's not Trump. It's all, because it's all of them. And I don't think there's any value. Yeah, he may be all those things.
That shall remain nameless.
But, you know, in some other life, maybe we were all those things too. So
well, that's true. And I just want to follow up with Linda and say that I think this, since the election day, it's been kind of like Kubler-Ross's, you know, pattern of, you know, stages of grief. and I'm sure I will find myself where I'm not saying some things. But yesterday, when I was reading all these different signs, and like I said, they were from all over the world, not just the U.S., that were saying things that I thought about, but I didn't think anybody else had thought about.
Right.
So I think it's a process for us all. And yesterday was a big boost. And I wanted to also say to Angela that I agree. If Hillary would have won, we would have pulled the covers right back up over our heads. And it's not that I'm thrilled with these results, but after yesterday, I feel like
He's a change agent.
yeah.
He's the end of a paradigm that doesn't work. Like Patty Cota Robles on Thursday, what she said in her meditation. I just put in the chat room a song that we often listen to in my meditation. It's called The Light of a Thousand Suns. And you're saying you invite people to open up their heart. Well, that's exactly what that song does. It's a beautiful song. Now, there's these bunch of people out in the desert pretending that they're playing instruments. That part's funny, but the song itself is beautiful, and it's a Guru Ganeshi band.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, he's he really is showing us what doesn't work anymore, and he's unified us in ways that we wouldn't have been unified if Hillary had come into power.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say I also agree with Angela. And I think that what happened was, we went back to sleep when Obama got elected too, because we just handed it back to him and we said, okay, take over, be our change, be our hope. And we went back to sleep and we let him do it. And we just, because before he was elected, there was very clear signs that there was trouble. And we had a flip 2 years in when we lost control, and we never got it back. Those were signs. It was all there. It was all there. And we just chose not to look at it.
As you say, and as Neil says, like and Patty says, we're being pushed to the edge whether we want to or not, and we're being sent to flight school.
Yep, exactly. And we just have to have faith that when we jump, we either fly or the net appears. That's I think it's an Irish thing, jump and the net will appear.
Yeah. You're here. And I'm grateful that we're all together as we learn to fly.
Brenna, I kept saying, Brenna.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I?
I was on mute. You couldn't. Nobody could hear me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was ironing, so I had my camera off. But I just think it's also important to note that we created this vacuum of almost a fact-free environment. And so when we're talking about taking that leap, I think it's really important for people to get down to, I know that there's this dissent against pushing kids through school and creating these little minions or whatever, but I think it's really important for people to learn about things and have education and a place to jump from where their critical thinking is intact, so that when they take that leap of faith, they can do it and still be able to revert back to should I fall for this, or can I read between the lines, or can I think of something that is, something that is factual that I can compare this with. And I think that the loss of that in our society is concerning. And I'm not dissing on any religious movement or even on this movement at all, but a lot of the times it's oh, we don't need that because we have God and we have this and that. Well, I mean, the Earth's process and the way that humans came to be in through billions of years of evolution is also really fascinating, and it's factual. And if, a lot of people had just looked at history, I think that they would have learned a lot before making votes the way that they voted, because they could compare a lot of people that have come in the past that had some of the characteristics that this new person has. So I'm just really, I'm conflicted right now, because I get the movement and a lot of the people in it like live in the spheres and all this stuff, but I'm like, let's get grounded here, back to earth, back to like what is real and what is like factual, because I think it gives people a really solid base for critical thought, and that's like a shield for people to be like protected from getting taken advantage of or falling for like con men and cons schemes, all that stuff. So I don't know. I'm conflicted right now. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else.
It makes sense to me, and I think it's okay to be conflicted, because I'm sure since the day of the election, most of us have felt some sort of conflict. And like I was saying about the Kubler-Ross thing, I think it's a process. I don't think you wake up the day after the march and say, oh, everything's better. I believe that there's going to be a lot more marches, and there's going to be a lot more worldwide marches. When somebody in Africa is being a group of people is being mistreated, you're going to see marches are going to be the new thing. And I think I heard today that yesterday was unprecedented, period. Nothing like it's ever happened before. And it started out by somebody on a Hawaiian island saying, hey, I got an idea. And look where it went. It went crazy, and in a good way. And I also understand there was little to no violence anywhere. And so I think that's another thing. And I think we're going to get where we want to be going. It's just, we can't go back to sleep. We also can't try to rush too quickly, but I don't think there's any time for sitting back. And I also believe that just seeing the proof of how many people came out of the woodwork, and if it had been a million men and women march for the next thing that should occur, I think we'll see double the numbers. And I do think there's going to be conflict for a while. I mean, or you're going to have conflicted thoughts about one thing and the other. And I don't think that's abnormal either. Over.
Well, yesterday was a start. It was the first step of, so you have to take one step at a time. And yesterday was a good step. And I think it was a wake up step. And you're right. We can't go back to sleep. We can't, because the earth can't stand it if we go back to sleep.
Yep.
Part of the playbook that they're using, though, is to wear us down, to numb us up so that we tune out. And we have, Americans in general, have a history of, we elect a president and we go back to sleep. And we just turn the keys over, and and then I mean, when have we ever watched every single cabinet appointment like this? I mean, it's never. So now we're all kind of worn out, and people are tired. But now what we have to do as citizens, like my friend in LA was telling me, I have to go back to reading the newspaper. We've tuned out to the point, and we've given up to the point where we're not engaged in our civic duty. And as Americans, each of us has to realize that as a citizen in this country, we have a civic duty, and that we have to be functioning as a civic participant on a daily basis. We can't just go back to sleep and wait for the next big election to come around to fix it. We have to take steps every day so that that next election comes around, we actually get something done and we actually fix something. Because this was a fixture by default, remember. Only 27% of registered voters chose this path. 73% of registered voters chose something else. So there's no mandate. There's no, no, there is, no. It's like to everything that they are saying, it's a no. So everybody outside of Washington has got to make those people in Washington feel us. And that started yesterday.
And I think the beautiful thing about that is to know that not the rest of the world thinks we're a bunch of ding-dongs. That they all came, everyone came together as one. I mean, the ones that participated came together as one. And to me, that was so beautiful because for the last few months, we've been talking about how we don't want the rest of the world to think we're all getting ready to drink the Kool-Aid. It's like, so anyway, Shabana, I see that you've joined us and the call's about to be over. And last week that happened too. So I don't know if that was mix up on our part or yours.
My computer didn't work, and I'm still having the same problem.
Oh, okay.
So it's at my end.
Okay. Just
Thank you for asking, though.
okay. Well, it's 1:02, and since the sun did rise on Saturday morning, and I was sitting around thinking,
And Saturday was a very inspiring day for me, and I think for a lot of other people.
I agree. I think it's the boost in the arm that a lot of people needed because it isn't just the Americans that were going into the FEAR mode. Because, and I heard something on the news this morning that said what the Americans have to realize, and this is from people from around the world, that when what happens to the Americans will eventually come around and happen to everybody else. And it's sort of like when Greece went into the tank economically, and there was so much talk and worry about what kind of worldwide. We have to realize that we are dependent. We're interdependent. And anyway, we could go on with this conversation for probably another hour, but since it's 1:03, I want to thank everybody for being here, and I will get the recording up sometime later today. And thank you, Linda, very much for reading.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
And thank you, everybody, for
Love you
joining
all.
the call.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank you.
Linda.
Bye.
Bye.